All right. Make Do Suburban Fireman Podcast, episode 26. I'm your host, Nick Peppard, co-host Sean Duffy, and we are joined today with Brian Weigle out of Elmira, New York. Brian, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, well, thank you for having me.
So, Brian, why don't you give us a little bit of background here? I'm not a big fan of reading bios, although I have your bio in front of me. So, obviously, you're up there in Elmira Heights, training officer, paramedic extraordinaire, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, fill in the gap a little bit, man. Where's kind of how long you been on the job and what you got going on up there in New York?
So, been on with my local volunteer fire department now for going on 11 years. Started when I was 18. Started just, right after high school. Actually started as a junior firefighter program. Started getting really involved in the training probably year and a half out after, getting my firefighter 1, firefighter 2, really started trying to explore the extra training. Whether it was reading, watching videos, then decided to take the big jump into EMS.
Don't do it.
I had a cardiac arrest save, and I was just like, all right, this is all I could get behind this. And 3.5, 4 years ago, decided, all right, I'm really going to jump in, and took my paramedic, and here I am as a paramedic full time, running 18,000 plus calls there. So that keeps me quite busy, and I learn a lot from that. Training officer with the fire department, I started that about 2 years ago. Took my state cert, got nationally certified. Enjoy that, started out slow in the process, just to, I didn't want to jump 2 feet first into anything. And then took over really last year. So, that, oh boy, what else is my background? I guess I'm married. No, I'm married to my beautiful wife. We have a little one on the way.
Yeah, you better get that out there.
Due in June. Yeah, better mention that. I don't want to get in trouble with a wife.
No.
Got a little boy due in June. That's super excited and happy, and on my days off, planning for some conferences and trainings, and getting around for the baby, and cooking food for the house, and
husband stuff.
Husband stuff.
Yeah, I hear you, man. So let's kind of back up to the training stuff. You got involved with Fire Nuggets a few years ago, and this is kind of how we all met. Like through Fire Nuggets, through the Twin Tiers Fire Conference a couple years back, and let's just talk about that a little bit. How'd you get involved with Fire Nuggets, and kind of talk about the Twin Tiers thing for a couple minutes, and like I said, we'll kind of dive in from there.
Yeah, so Fire Nuggets is kind of doing some research. Around here, we don't really have my area in upstate New York. For those that aren't familiar, Elmira used to be a large manufacturing hub. We were the home of Ward de France, American de France. So, this area is known to have a lot of fire service ties. But we didn't have a lot of those training conferences. We do have the State Fire Academy 20 minutes up the road in Montour Falls. But I wanted that extra. I wanted that extra where, it's guys that are doing the job all across the country. It's affordable training. It's training for folks that didn't always have the best availability to do FDIC or larger conferences. So I started looking into, Fools and Fire Nuggets and organizations, and just planning a conference in general. Got a hold of Fire Nuggets, started talking to Jeff Bryant from there, and we got the chapter set up, the affiliate set up 2021 when we had the fire conference. Our first conference, I think went very well. COVID kind of put a damper on that situation. But I think, for our first year, I think it went very well. Small turnout, we were hoping for a bigger turnout, but I think for the the 4 guys and Timmy Klett, Kyle Sampson, and then Nick and Sean showing up, I think it went quite well. We got a lot of good feedback, and I want to grow it. That's for sure. I definitely want to grow the affiliate and grow the training availability. And I think that's kind of the ultimate goal, is to grow, what trainings we have in this area, and still trying to find that right niche in this area to make those connections and grow the affiliate. So that's been my biggest battle, is growing the affiliate in this area and growing and showing people that, hey, this isn't just something we're doing for fun. We're serious about this. We're serious of getting this training, and we enjoy doing this, and we're bringing in guys that are serious about the job and enjoy training and want to spread their wealth of knowledge. And so,
yeah, I think Sean could probably agree that anytime you start a conference, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of freaking work. And, being on both sides of it, well, really all 3 sides of it, student, instructor, and doing a conference, running your own show there's so much behind the scenes stuff. There's so much that goes into logistically and financially, and just, setting things up and getting people where they need to be. And it really is a ton of extra work that a lot of people, like I said, if you've never been on that side of it, you don't realize. And then it's, not only getting it off the ground, but then sustaining and maintaining is a big challenge for anybody, I think. I mean, it's not something that's a given. Just because you put something together doesn't mean people are going to show up. It doesn't mean that you're going to get the numbers you want. It's a lot of work. Even if people support it, there's so many different options to choose from nowadays, and vying for people's time all within short periods of time a lot of times. And that makes a very interesting dynamic. But yeah, Sean, I know that you got the Great Lakes Hot coming up here in June. You guys have been working to get that, kind of going again for the second year. Weigh in, bro.
Yeah. So, much like Brian, I saw a need there. I don't want to say that training wasn't happening in my state. It certainly was. I just thought there could be more. And I started researching, like, hey, what conferences are around me? Because, as well as I do, coming from Florida, I mean, you can throw a stone and hit a fire conference, they're just all over the place. And, yeah, I just didn't find really any that I was accustomed to, like the formats and things like that. And it seemed like a lot of them were geared towards fire chiefs, or like being a true expo for the vendors and things like that. So I said, I'm going to start Great Lakes Hot. I had Todd Edwards, Kyle Romagus, Steve Robertson. We all got together and did it for the first year, and it was great. But here's the thing, like, people don't really know how much it goes into planning that, and I think that even as a student, we tend to take that stuff for granted. There's a lot. It's a lot financially. It's a lot logistically, like you said. But, what I've come to find out is people like to talk about training, and they like to say, like, oh, there's no training and everything else like that. And then you give them avenues and you do all these things and they still don't show up. So I would tell anybody who's going down that avenue, if that is your passion and you put into it, it's going to be frustrating. You're not going to see the results that you would hope for, at least not right away. Or you might have like a really good first year, and then, it might taper down some. Like, you're going to have ebbs and flows with this thing. And I would just stay with the whole reason why you started to begin with, because at the end of the day, I don't care if there's 4 people or there's 400. I want the firefighters there that want to be there, that are going to take that knowledge and improve themselves and their organizations and share that. And that's really what it's about. So, like Brian said, COVID kind of screwed a lot of things up. I think we're starting to transition out of that. And, guys are starting to get back on the road and travel, and students are starting to take classes, and the restrictions have lightened up quite a bit. So yeah, it's an exciting thing. I think, if that's something that you feel passionately about, whether it's through Fire Nuggets, starting your own Fools chapter, your own fire conference, you should definitely venture down that path and at least experience what it's like to put on a training.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think anytime you do something like that, it's easy to get caught up in numbers, right? But the truth is, whether, like I said, it's 40 or 400, you want the people that do show up to learn and to grow and to be able to be better than when they showed up, and that's really the goal. I can tell you, this is the fourth year doing the North Florida Fire Expo, and while some things have gotten easier just because you kind of know what to expect, you learn some things, but we're finding that it is so hard to maintain that level of keeping that energy up, right, and getting people in, and like I said, I mean, now the advent of the regional conferences, you can literally look on social media every day and there's another one popping up, a 1 day seminar or a 2 or 3 day conference. I mean, there's stuff popping up everywhere, which is a good thing for the fire service, because more now than ever there's quality training available to people that they don't have to drive across the country anymore to go get this training, to get this information, which is a good thing. But like I said, I think it really is a extremely competitive. I hate to say the word competitive for fire conferences now, but it is very competitive because you only have so many instructors, and students can only spend so much money in so many different places in a year.
Right.
And so it's like, trying to create that experience where people want to come back and they spread the news and things like that is a challenge that I think anybody that runs these events, and that goes even for the big shows. I mean, you look at your FDICs and Firehouse Expos, like, obviously those are historically the big conferences, but I think that that goes for them too, is creating that atmosphere where people want to come and partake and do stuff. And like you said, a lot of people talk about training, a lot of people talk about being better, but then when it's time to, hey, come to this conference or that conference or whatever, oh, I got this going on or that going on, and it's like I said, talk is cheap.
Yeah.
And that's just the
Yes,
reality
it
of it,
is.
is you're going to get a lot of people that, oh yeah, I'll be there. And, maybe half, if you're lucky, half the people that say they'll be there will actually be there. And that's just the hard reality, right?
It
really is.
And like, here's what I say, and this is going to sound harsh, but I really don't care. I wish people would stop fucking giving a shit about who's on the cadre list and just realize that it's training.
Absolutely.
If there's a training event in your backyard, go. If it's around you, support it, right? And I'm just really tired of seeing, like, well, who's the name of the instructors? Who cares, right? Not a single one of us out there is better than anybody else. We're all firemen, right? And you got something you want to share, and it may not be as polished as some other people and things like that, but that's not the point, right? We're not doing this shit for fame. We're doing it for our fire service, and we're doing it to advance and be better together. And everybody's got something to offer, whether that's good or bad. And I'll tell you that I've been really excited to take classes from people who are well recognized, and I was not impressed. It didn't do anything for me. That doesn't make them a bad instructor by any means. But what I'm getting at is, I really wish that when we put together trainings, we don't focus necessarily on the name of the individual coming, and we just focus on the objective is, what are we here to provide, right? What does my area need? There's lots of people in your own area that are probably good at flowing water and stretching line and doing all that stuff, and searches and forcible entry and things like that. And the fact is, not all of us can be everywhere at once. So don't get discouraged when, like, you're like, oh, I really want this individual to come, but I can't afford it. That's fine. Find somebody in your neighboring area who's probably just as good, that is willing to help you out in that endeavor. And I think that's where a lot of trainings fail, is because subconsciously we think that for this thing to be a success and to get all these registrations, we have to have a roster of like all these heavy hitters, right? And that's just not true. And there is a budget involved, whether we like it or not. That's just how it is. It has to be paid for. You're using supplies and things like that. So just love the job, man, and listen to anybody who's willing to share their stories and their experiences and whatever knowledge they have. And that to me is what it should be about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I look, we had, my area, New York. Everybody's wants FDNY. Those are your big names, but guys from Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo, they're on the job. They're busy cities. We have Elmira right down the road. There's some guys, that are state fire instructors, or just guys in general that, I'll tell you what, have a hell of a passion of knowledge and are willing to teach and are into the job. those guys, if they really want to get to teaching and getting their name out there, just have that love, they'll come in. They'll do it. I don't need big Joe Schmo from big city department to come in and say, this is how we do it, and charge me 12 grand. I'd rather have 7 or 8 guys come in who are into the job and passionate for a couple of days and aren't here to make a whole lot of money, because we all know there's those guys out there that are about padding their paychecks. I want somebody that's into the job. I don't want somebody that's just there to put their name out there, I guess, if that's the word I want to say,
Dude, 100%, man. I mean, I think sometimes, we got to remember, like Sean was saying, what are we here for? Are we here to truly make the fire service better? Or are we here to pat ourselves on the back or stroke our egos or whatever? And that's what it comes down to is like, I mean, yes, there is a business side to running training and conferences. I get it. There's bills to be paid. But at the end of the day, like, it's not all about money and fame. Like if that's why someone is there, if that's why they're putting themselves out there, then to me, that's the wrong motive. And that's the wrong reason for doing this. Like I said, the people that want to be there are going to be there. You know what I'm saying? The people that are into the job, and that's what I found is the vast majority of people are fit that mold. There's plenty of people out there that just want to help. They want to, obviously they want to make sure that, they can get there and back and everything. And most guys are like, hey, take care of some travel and, put me up, whatever, when I get there, feed me, whatever. And that's what people are looking for, right? Is, most guys aren't like, oh, I'm going to need my limousine set at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, pick me up at the airport at 7:02 sharp. I want tuxedo pressed, in my room when I get there. I mean, guys, does that exist in the fire service? Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, I'm being a little eccentric with the description, but I will say that by and large, there's a ton of really great dudes out there that are just hustling, grinding, aren't afraid to get sweaty, aren't afraid to get dirty, get in the fucking trenches, do the work. And, I think that's the good thing about the fire service now is that information is so accessible. And guys, there's plenty of guys out there, like I said, that are willing to help. It's just a matter of getting it set up. And I think that's half the battle. But I can tell you right now that the other half of the battle is, it's becoming, a very, almost, it's kind of weird because I think we went through the surge, right? We had before there was this big void when you only had the big shows. I remember coming on the job, like you either went to FDIC, Firehouse Expo, Firehouse World, place like that, which they're great conferences, right? But as regional conferences started popping up, you started seeing some of these conferences pop up, and it's like, oh man, this is great, and a lot of other people kind of followed suit. And like I said, I mean, when you're talking about trying to get, because you got to figure the people that show up for conferences most of the time are a small percentage of the fire service, right? Let's be honest, like the vast majority of our fire departments are not going to these things in training. You're lucky if you can get over 20% of your department to show up for any one training event, on a routine basis. You may get a surge here and there, but consistently get 20% of the people to put out, you're doing really, really good. And that's about the norm in the fire service, right? You may get, a pocket of people, and when you go to these different conferences, you see a lot of the same people for a reason, right? The ones that are hungry, the ones that are dialed in, the ones that want it are there. They're learning, they're growing, they're hungry, they're getting it. And then it's like you may drag one or two extra here and there, but it's a battle, man. It's a battle to get, because let's say, Brian, you're into the job, you want to do, a ton of training, but you have finite resources, right? You have a wife, you have a kid on the way, you have a full-time job, you're doing all this other stuff, and you can only spend so much time and money away from family, right? And so if you got to pick, let's say 3 or 4 events in a year that you can say, hey, I can afford to go to these. That's a tough order, right? It's a tough order to sit there and say, what 3 or 4 conferences do I go to in a year as a student? That's what I guess what I'm getting at is we're competing not for the whole fire service. If you think about it, we're competing for that 20% or less of the fire service that's going to go to stuff like this and get better. And again, I hate to use the word competing, but it's more or less from the standpoint of there's so many great events out there now. And that's why I say when people get like caught up in numbers, don't get caught up in numbers, because you got to realize these people can only go to so many events at one time or in the course of a year. and realize, like, if you got 60, 80, 100 people showing up to anything, like that's solid, bro. That is solid, to get that many people to show up and put out. And really, like I said, Sean kind of hit on it earlier, is you're not looking for, to me anyway, I've had to shift my focus and realize, like, quality over quantity, hands down, all day, every day, because you want the 40, 50, 60 people that do show up to have one hell of a time, to learn, to grow, to go back, energized, batteries full, ready to go back and hopefully make a difference in their firehouse, right? And that takes commitment and attention to detail and dedication. And I think sometimes, like I said, it's easy to get caught up in, well, this conference has 100 more people, or they're doing this or they're doing that. Really, if you're doing it for the right reasons, it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you got to be able to pay the bills, but other than that, that's it. Like, you're trying to pay the bills. Nobody's getting rich off the shit, is what I'm trying to say. Nobody's, and if you are, let me know your secret, because I have not made any money on this stuff. It's a labor of love. It's something you're going to be, meet detractors. You're going to meet resistance. You're going to meet, bumps in the road, and you have to truly love and believe in your purpose, right? And why you're doing these conferences, because it's one thing to go to a conference as a student. It's one thing to go there even as an instructor, but when you are physically putting in blood, sweat, and tears to put something like this on, it is a labor of love. It is something you have to truly believe in what you're doing, and realize that the chances are you're going to be happy to break even most years. And that's just the reality. I mean, if you got a little extra you can throw back into the event for next year, that's fantastic. But that's not the reality for most conferences, is, kind of where I'm going with it. I know, like, I went down a rabbit trail there. So, but does that make sense to you guys? I mean, are you guys on the same page here? I mean, I feel like, for me, it's like you're giving a part of your soul when you do stuff like this, because it's a very thankless job to put a conference on. Like, you're going to be the guy hustling in the background when everybody else is chilling and enjoying the fruits of your labor. You're the one sweating all the details and staying up at night trying to work everything out and stressing over money, stressing over, did this get done? Did this get done? Is this person going to show up? Right. That's the truth of running training events.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was some times where I'm answering emails, answering phone calls at night at work, and just Chelsea would be like, "Hey, you all right over there? Because I'm stressing out, last minute details. All right, is everything good to go? Does somebody have their hotel room? Is the venue going to be okay?" Little things people, like you said, that student doesn't think about, you have to think about, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. I think I definitely think that, in a way, everybody, should be involved in a little bit of planning so they can see what goes on. But again, that takes a lot of work and the right person.
Yeah. So, and that's just it. Right. And I don't want to take anything away from anybody. I mean, there's a lot of great instructors out there, and at the end of the day, when you plan training, like, you do want people to attend. So you got to make sure that you select programs that align with what the students want. My point behind, like, the expense really was, as students, we tend to get hung up on who's coming, right? And as a planner, when you know that that's what your students want, that's sometimes very difficult to give them, right? And it's just like, hey, I can't just do that, right? So I would like to see the fire service just get back to the whole, like, there's levels, right? Like, this person teaches this stuff at a very good level. They're super knowledgeable, but we just can't do that right now. But let's meet somewhere in the middle and then continue to build. And I think that's where a lot of people fail in training, is they go straight for the top immediately, and they've just given one hell of a training, and they're not going to be able to duplicate that, because on the other side of this, as much as we all become friends doing these things, whether it's we're being brought in as instructors, or we're coming in as students and we're getting to meet people, as a event planner, you've got to make sure that you're continuing to give fresh content, right? So if the instructors you bring in are the same, you can't always bring in the same course, right? If the instructors aren't producing new material and putting it out there, then you've got to look at it and say, hey, this is not personal, but I've got to bring in other instructors that are going to meet the needs for the students too, because that's really what it's about, right? And I've seen a lot of that happen, where it's multiple different conferences, all the same instructors, and then students wind up coming back and being like, oh man, I went to this conference and I was psyched about it, but it's the same stuff I just learned at the last one. I wish I would have gone here instead. So I think as planners, we need to do a better job of realizing, like, are we oversaturating training with the same people or the same programs? What are our options? Like, let's try and give that out, because it's all good. You know what I mean? It's all good stuff. And all the instructors and everything, like, they do a hell of a job. But, if you want training to thrive, you got to keep that engagement of people. And we can't do that if we just offer the same stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's spot on, dude. I mean, it just, like I said, kind of going back to what we started to say at the beginning. If you've never done something like this, please don't be discouraged by this conversation. Just understand, going with your eyes open. Like, it is going to be, it's going to try you at times, and you're going to put a lot of personal sweat equity into it, and sometimes, like I said, I mean, it may not grow as fast as you want it to. It may not, be where you want it to be right off the bat. But it's worth it. You know what I'm saying? It's worth it to better the fire service. It's worth it to try to, make your region, your area, whatever, better by bringing in outside training. And here's the irony of it, right? Sean, you could teach something in your own home turf and people are like, yeah, whatever, Sean. And I could literally come in, what's that 100-mile rule? That's what makes you an expert. If you're from more than 100 miles away, you're automatically an expert. So, but I can literally take your program, right, and come into your home turf and probably teach the same thing. And because I'm a different face, they'll be like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever, right? And that's the reality of it is, I mean, sometimes, it's that whole profits not without honor, except for our own country thing, where it's like, sometimes people just need to hear the perspective from somebody else or a fresh voice. And there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of good stuff out there. Let's say engine stuff, you bring this class in for a couple of years and maybe it's like, hey, you know what, time to change it up a little bit, a different voice, a different perspective, maybe a little different spin on it. The overall work is similar, but you're bringing in a different perspective and a different phase. And I think that, keeping it fresh is important. I think also it's got, kind of keep in mind that some of your biggest detractors a lot of times are the people in your own backyard, right? The people you expect to be like, oh yeah, good for you, man. And that's just the reality of the fire service. That's the reality of life. Sometimes it's hard to gain traction at home, and not saying that, you shouldn't try, because you absolutely should. Just understand that sometimes your biggest battles will come closest to home. And it's one of those things where people talk a big talk, but when it's time to put out, and come spend time and money and invest in training, it's hard to get some people over that hump. And so, people that, do this stuff, I think it's, like I said, you just got to be crystal clear on where you're trying to go, and kind of have that resolve that, hey, you know what, there's going to be some ups and downs. There's going to be good years and bad years. And maybe it looks a little different, maybe you say, hey, this didn't really work. And you take a step back and say, hey, let's try a different approach. But the overall objective doesn't change. The objective of bettering your brothers and sisters around you doesn't change. It's just, your approach, like I said, sometimes has to change in order to find that niche, to find that groove, so to speak, in the, that kind of groove in the vein, if you will, where you kind of can just plant yourself and build what you're trying to build. So I know we kind of beat that up a little bit, but I do think it is an important discussion. That's kind of how we all met. Fire Nuggets, by the way, for anybody that doesn't know Fire Nuggets, Brian talked about them a little bit earlier. They do great work all over the country. There's chapters all over the country. They do fantastic work. Same with the Fools groups. Sean, I know you're active with your Fools group there in Michigan, active with my Fools group here in Wisconsin. And I can tell you that if you're looking for some like localized training, the Fire Nuggets and the Fools chapters, I mean, all over the country do some amazing stuff that sometimes when we need some logistical help, when we need manpower, that's a good kind of pool to draw from, right? A good resource for bringing in people to speak or to teach. And so it doesn't always have to be, this massive 3-4 day ordeal. Sometimes just a simple, hey, we're doing a hot day, Fools is going to host this hot day, or Fire Nuggets is going to, host this, the seminar or whatever. We forget about those sometimes. We forget about how many great opportunities like those exist that aren't necessarily full-blown conferences, if you will, and expos and things.
Yeah, no, for sure. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a Fools chapter in this area, and I don't know whatever happened. And so I think Fire Nuggets is definitely something that I'm willing to grow in this area, and I hope a lot of people, you know, locally see that. Hey, listen, I'm here. I want to do this. This is something that I'm passionate about, and sometimes I think trying to show people that, because like Nick said, sometimes your biggest talkers are in your own backyard, and until you bring that and show that, they're not going to believe you. And I think that's been the biggest thing with Fire Nuggets is, hey, I'm serious about it. They're serious about it. No, it doesn't have the name, like the Fools does, but it's definitely something that I'm passionate about. Fire Nuggets, that is for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's just being the example really is what this conversation is about, and I hope nobody takes what we're talking about in a negative light, because it's not negative at all. It's a well-rounded thing of, hey, when you sit down with yourself and you're like, I want to do this, it sounds great. And you're going to have a lot of people who are like, hey man, let me know how I can help any way I can. Yeah, let's do it. And everyone's fired up. And then you move forward and you realize really quick that you wind up having to do a lot of things by yourself. So just prepare for that, because that's really what it is about. Like, I give people opportunities. Look, you can come with me and you can do this. Whether you're here or not, or whether you participate or not, this is going to happen. Period. I'm just giving you an opportunity to be a part of it. Right. So don't get discouraged if you do start something and your support system, or who you thought was your support system, isn't necessarily doing all the things that need to be done. That's part of it, man. Like, how important is the end result to you? Because if this is something that you really truly feel and you're passionate about, whether it's with a Fools chapter, Fire Nuggets, your own individual speaking or teaching, whatever the case is, again, go after it, man. Like, stay hungry, start it, finish it, and learn from it, because the only thing you have to do is to continue to grow. That's it. And hopefully in that time frame, everybody else will see that this is really like a labor of love for you, that you're pouring a lot of time, effort, and energy into this, and you'll start getting the right people coming towards you that actually want to help and build it. And who knows, man, that could take years. But if you never stay persistent and you never continue with that, then our whole gripe of, oh, there's no training around here, and we just give up on it, we're no better than the people that are talking shit and not showing up to training.
Well, absolutely. And that's been the hardest thing, is keep pushing, keep working, and not giving into the haters and the shit talking. And it's definitely been my drive, is to just prove the haters fucking wrong.
Yeah. So let's flip the script for a little bit, right? I want to know what it's like for you in your volunteer organization, as far as staffing level and everything like that. Like, how do you guys do things? And what kind of challenges do you maybe see with that being in the volunteer setting? And let's just go from there.
So with that, my department runs. We just had our record year of 721 calls. We have a full-time driver on 24/7. With that, it's like volunteerism across the country. Our numbers are dwindling. Training state requirements are going up. OSHA, PESH, we're doing more training with them and state requirements. So trying to keep, above ground and just having people interested in doing the Monday night trainings, because that's when our training nights are, is coming in fresh, ready to go, and energized has definitely been the biggest challenge. For my department, I think I speak for a lot, is keeping those members energized, those new members, older members. Retention is, key. And that's where I wanted to get in with the training and starting, hey, listen, we're not FDNY. We don't need to be FDNY, but let's look at, hey, let's look at this tactic. Let's look at this training, changing things up just to keep that energy level high and everybody wanting to learn and be available. I think the other thing too is, I don't know how, you guys in your area are, how many volunteers you have, but my area, our numbers are down. Everybody's getting older. a lot of guys are starting family that were the young guys. So, I'm starting a family. I was considered, and I still am considered one of the young guys in my department, and I'm starting a family, so that's going to be less time around the fire service, and trying to bring in those younger generation is definitely been a challenge. And, my brother just joined, so, we have another Weigle in the fire service. So I guess we better watch out for that. So we're trying to bring that new generation. And as I tell people, and I sometimes get upset, is, people look at my generation as, oh, we're lazy, we don't want to do it. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think I'm working 48 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours a week. It's hard to want to go to the fire department when you still have your family you have to see and other obligations that you have to see and do. So it's trying to make everything meet and everything mesh and make sure you still have a life and that, you can do all the mandated training and you're getting everything done.
So, being the training officer, this is unique. So I was just in Wisconsin, and I was with Jeremy Sanders, and we did the searchable versus survivable lecture. And then right afterwards, him and I sat down and we did a culture lecture. Nothing too mind blowing, just talking, about what are we seeing in the fire service? How can we contribute, or, how are we maybe also part of the problem? And, it's kind of interesting because we were talking about how when we recruit, we often put a lot of emphasis on our benefits, and we're not really doing a good enough job of advertising the job itself. Like, what are the requirements? So what we have found is when people come in, they were so hyper focused on what they're getting out of it that they didn't even understand the job to begin with. Now, we tend to use the excuse, well, our numbers are down, right? Nobody's applying anymore. We need people, we need people, we need people. So we wind up just giving people positions because they have to fill them. Like, you can have 4 positions available and 3 people apply, and they're probably all going to get a job unless they absolutely mess something up, right? So when it comes to like your position as being the training officer and pulling these numbers and just getting people that are coming in, what are you seeing with that in that volunteer setting, as far as, are they staying committed to what they're supposed to be, or were they coming and joining over something completely different? Like, their thought process was not what it should have been.
So I think with that is, we've had members apply that we don't see. It happens, they'll apply, they'll get voted in, and we just don't see them. I think as far as, if you're going to join the volunteer fire service, you're going to find out within the first couple of weeks if you're going to stay. And I think no matter how much we try to push that, there's great benefits, this is the part of the job, people find out real quick that they're going to be involved or they're not going to be involved. And, I think as the training officer, we're actually looking at doing like a mentorship program in my department. That's something we're trying to get so we can keep those new people. So they can experience the job without going through, hey, this is what we expect of you, not just we're going to throw you into class. We're trying to get them built up. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is because, it's easy for me. Like, I have some volunteer time, right? Nick, I think you do too, right? So when I was a volunteer, I know what it was like for me. And it was very structured, right? Like, so we had a crew that stayed there during the day. They got paid, like $5 or $6 an hour, whatever it was then, but they weren't being paid as firefighters. They were being paid as like glorified janitors, essentially, right? Their job was to maintain the equipment and the grounds and the firehouse, and any calls that came in during the day were theirs to run. So it was always staffed because the volunteers would come in at night, and we would all have our schedules. Like, we'd sign up for days and whatnot. So it was very clear to us what the expectations were. And as I navigated away from that and became more into the career side, I kind of got the same vibe when it came to training of we have firefighters on the job who are like, well, I didn't sign up for that. Right. Or I got all my training in fire 1 and fire 2. And when I come back, I don't want to ever have a conversation that's one-sided. Like, Sean, you're only talking about the career side. Like, I like to try and bring out like what's happening in the fire service. So for you, and especially in the volunteer setting where it's hard to get members, is anybody coming into the firehouse being like, you can't make me do that? I didn't come here to do that. Like, I came here to give whatever little time I could to my community, and this is just too much for me.
I think we are seeing that, and it's hard to explain, especially to new people, and even guys that have been doing this job. That, hey, you come in, you take your fire classes, and then you got to continuously train. You got to do yearly updates, and that is a lot for a lot of people. And I think that does come as a shock to some folks, because gone are the days of everything's in-house training. They're adding more state classes, they're changing how things are done, and it definitely comes as a shock. I even remember when I first started, the requirements to do some things were nearly as bad as they are now. So definitely comes as a shock to a lot of people that, hey, there's a lot involved in this, and it's not just you come, you do 1 or 2 things, and you're done. And I think that's sometimes what makes it hard to keep new people, is because it's a lot of time commitment, and it's a lot. Oh, well, I thought I was going to do this and that, and we try to, as volunteers, and even I don't know how it per se is on the career side, but we try to say, hey, this is how it is. But until you're actually involved and see the behind the scenes, that like, okay, I got to keep up on so many skills and so many classes and so much drill attendance and call attendance, that, wow, I didn't think it was this crazy. So and trying to keep that and retain those members is definitely been the biggest challenge, I think, for a lot of volunteer fire departments. And I think, knowing some of the career guys I know, that you guys are seeing that in the career side, that there's a lot that goes into the career training and getting those people on board. You're not having people sign up like you used to take the civil service test or the physical agility test, and that's another thing with the volunteer side, is you got to be in shape. You can't just be a slug on the couch. You kind of have to have that physical ability, and so it definitely comes as a shock and a culture change to a lot of people that, like, oh, this is definitely not what I signed up for. This is something that, hey, it is what you signed up for. And how can we, I guess, with our mentorship program, is the question we are asking is, okay, this isn't what you thought you signed up for, but how do we show you how to get over that culture shock, if that makes sense? Is something we're trying to work on.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And I want Nick to chime in here in a second. But like, even for us, I think the last time, like, we just opened up for hiring, I think we had like 15 applicants for our city, which is low. It's and everybody's seeing that across the board. But like, I look at a lot of flyers that are out there for, hey, we're hiring, whatever, and very few of them are actually advertising, this is what we expect, right? Like, it's always like 48.96, get X amount of days off a month, get this. So it's all of the benefits that everyone's like, hey, so my thought process on that is, maybe we're attracting the wrong people. Maybe our approach to like getting people to come into our job, we're not targeting the right group, right? Because this is still a blue collar job, and I want somebody coming in the door. Like, I know when I started, I didn't give a crap how much I got paid. Like, I know that has to matter, don't get me wrong, but I was just lucky to get an opportunity. I was just felt fortunate for that, and I knew what firefighting entailed because I made sure I researched it. And I never had a bad taste in my mouth for training. Like, I wanted to train, I wanted to do stuff because I had the expectation of, hey, any day this could be my life on the line, or somebody I work with, or I could be running on somebody I know, especially being in the volunteer community. Like, right, like, I could be running on a family member or a close friend. like I've got to be good because they're relying on me. And I think over time, like we've kind of drifted away from that in our targeting approach to like hiring. So I was just curious what you're seeing, but I'm gonna turn it over to Nick so he can chime in here.
Oh, I'll keep it abbreviated, man. I agree. I think sometimes there's a lack of congruence between our recruitment and what we're actually doing, right? And what the job actually entails. Meaning we sell the high points, but we fail to mention the stuff that we actually deal with. Because you want to know the truth? The truth is probably 1% of the calls that you're going to go on are actually worth, like not worth, but working or incidents that challenge you, that puts you to the test, right? That's the reality. The reality of it is most of the calls we're going to go on are not super high acuity or super stressful calls. And that's a big part of it. Is a lot of people come in and they want that all these perks and this, that, and the other, and they come in and they realize, oh, they're scrubbing floors and toilets and they're running these routine, lifting grandma up off the bed, onto the bed at 2:00 in the morning, or they're taking Papa to to the hospital because he missed his doctor's appointment yesterday, or they're going to Smells and Bells and it's not working, or the sprinklers get it, and just there's a lot of routine stuff, right? Stuff that's routine to us. And so I think part of that, that the shiny bells and whistles that we dangle in front of people is a small portion of what we actually do, right? It's not every single call, and sometimes it's months. You go these spells, depending on where you're working, you may go a couple 2-3 months without a fire, right? You may, or someone else's shift is catching. Like, that's the reality, though, is we're here to serve and we're here to work and we're here to do a job. And I think that even on the volunteer side, right, we have to have certain standards, we have to have certain expectations, and guys got to realize, like, you're not gonna, it's not job town every time you roll out the door. And 95% of what we do is spend in the firehouse. It's checking it, the equipment, it's training, it's doing the routines, fire inspections and things like that. There's so much other shit that has to go into the job to be successful. And so the job loses its shine. And that's on the career side, of the volunteer side, whatever. And then the other part, I think, is, I find it funny, Brian, that you talked about one of the first things you mentioned when you talked about retaining people was training, right? It's amazing to me, and I've seen this on both the career and the volunteer side, where the people that are hungry, the people that do give a shit, that want to be better, are beat down. They get beat down for daring to better themselves, daring to step out of their comfort zone, daring to try something new, daring to take a class outside of the fire department, right? Or whatever. We talk about conferences for 30 minutes, and it's amazing how many fire departments discourage their members from doing that stuff, or openly encourage it, but then don't really encourage it. You know what I'm saying? Like, guys are having to spend their own time, their own money, and departments won't pay for anything. They don't want to do anything. And that is, to me, kind of it's a two-edged sword. So we do a shitty job. We put all these carrots out here and say, hey, come join our fire service. And we get the people that are looking at what's in it for me. And then when they realize, like, this is a thankless job, and there's really, oh man, yeah, there's some things that are good, but I got to give of myself. I got to give of my own time, my own money, my own energy to make this go. It's it's that underwhelming expectation, like, oh, I didn't have my expectations, I'm out. And then the other part of it is when you do have guys, and then they look across the bay at Joe Blow firefighter that's trying his best to give a shit, and he's getting fucking beat down. Why the hell do I want to go better myself when that's the end result, is I'm going to get just absolutely raked across the coals by my own fire department.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, and I'm not saying I get raked across the coals, and I think the biggest thing is it's hard to sometimes put our expectations out verbally. Career, volunteer, EMS, anything in the emergency services, and maybe expectations, but what you're actually going to see until you see it, until you are on the job and see what, whether it's training, how the job actually is, until you see that, you can't tell somebody verbally how the job is, because it's something that just comes as a shock, because you're like, yeah, you see the cool stuff of fighting fire, the car accidents, the CPR calls. That's the stuff we put out there. But until you show somebody, hey, we're picking the body up that's been there for 2 weeks, you're picking up grandma that fell out of bed 14 times. You just can't tell people that. So, those guys that are giving a crap and do have that passion, I think fire departments need to rely on those guys and push those guys and have those guys be, the face sometimes. I don't want to say, but like, hey, this is how we want to see people, I guess, is how I would put it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's you in particular, but I mean, I've seen it too many times over the last 18 years on the job where people, I think where Sean's getting at is the premise of recruitment, whether it's career or volunteer. When all we do is put out what's in it for them, you attract the kind of people that are looking for things that's for them, for me, and what's in it for me. And by default, we're fucking our culture in the process because you have a bunch of self-serving people now that aren't getting their needs met. So, oh, fuck this, I'm out, and they go somewhere else. Or they just become bumps along and toxic and bring down the culture because they're not looking at the job the way it should be looked at. And that is, we are public servants. We're here to give to our brothers and sisters. We're here to give to our community. We're here to do for others. And I think that, and maybe you're seeing stuff different on the volunteer side, but on the career side, like Sean said, we're in the same boat in a lot of ways. The truth is, we have unrealistic, these unrealistic flyers, and we put all this stuff out with all these things. And then why can't we get people, or why don't we keep people or whatever? And it's like, or why do people come in and, they just get in a rut and it's like they're there for 20 years, collect a pension and move on. If we want high performing culture, if we want high performing mindsets, then we have to, first of all, be real upfront, I think, with our message that we're sending. And two, you have to invest and feed the people that are hungry. When they come in the door and they want to learn, they want to grow, and you do find those people, invest in those people, right? Don't waste your breath on people that are just going to throw rocks their entire time being there. Like, if people may have made it very abundantly clear through their actions and attitudes that, hey, you know what? I don't want anything to do with you guys. Screw you guys. I'm not going to be better no matter what. Like, at the end of the day, there's a minimum standard, and that's what you can enforce, obviously. But when we're talking about going above that and being better, I think you got to find the people that are willing to go there, that have the right mindset, and invest in those people, and don't get bogged down with the people that are just going to throw stones their entire career, whether it's volunteer career, career side of things. That's, I think, at least my mindset, that's where we should invest our time, is first of all, being upfront with what we're actually doing and what it looks like, right? And not just selling the bells and whistles. But number two, when we're talking about retention, I think Mark alone hit it on the head, right? The best recruitment tool is retention. If you have a thriving culture and people come and stay and are involved and plugged in, and there's energy there, right? Momentum builds momentum. And it's one of those things that it's hard to get started, right? It's hard to take a culture doesn't have any momentum, or maybe going the wrong way, turn it around and get that momentum going. But once you get that and build that, that's one of the greatest recruitment tools in the world, because people are like, damn, I want to be a part of that. Like, whatever they got going on at XYZ fire department. And I think that's what everybody should want for their fire department. Everybody should want that culture where people come in and want to stay and be a part of it and be excited to come to the firehouse, whether that's twice a week, helping out on calls in the volunteer setting, or 3 times a week on shift, or whatever that looks like. How do we get there, Brian? And that's what I kind of want to put it back on you on the volunteer side of things, is when it comes to, I get it. You can't force people to be there. You're not employing them per se. But how do you sell that message in the volunteer side of things and keep people engaged? You talk about training, you talk about, keeping things fresh so that people want us to participate. What are some of the things you're seeing? What are some ideas that maybe you've had, and then also some of the challenges you've had with that, in your area, not just your department, but just in the area that you're at? Do you find guys kind of more or less content with status quo, or is that something that you have pockets of people that are driven? At least for me, I always feel like there's little pockets of people, but as a whole, it seems like the fire service is almost sleepwalking at times in a lot of ways, where we just got guys that going through the motion for whatever reason. And guys don't even, you ask people why they're there, and they have some rote, explanation of, oh, I want to help people, or they don't even really know anymore.
Or they say, my pension.
Yeah.
Why are you still here if you hate it so bad? My pension.
Yeah.
That's a common excuse, which is crazy to me, but that's neither here or there.
So I think with especially the volunteer world is and I know, especially in New York State, they're trying to figure out how do we, recruit and retain, and they're trying to. I think the biggest thing hurting, honestly, I think the biggest thing hurting sometimes retainment isn't the training culture, the culture of the fire service. Sometimes is, as much as we want to say it is, it's the economy. When I'm working 70 plus hours, it's hard to make those trainings and maintain that, because I'm one of those guys that if I do something, I want to jump at, I want to be involved. I'm going to give it my all. And I think that's the people that stay in the volunteer fire service and they're staying and we are retaining them are that type of person. They're involved. They want to be involved. But at some point, you have to ask, what are you going to do? What am I going to get out of this? Whether it's a tax credit, getting sent to trainings, whatever it may be, we all kind of want a little bit of benefit and something given back, whether it's food, pizza parties, whatever. We all, you know what I'm getting at that. As far as trying to keep people, sometimes it's just the name of the game, keeping them trained and keeping them happy. And I'm all scatterbrained today, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, like there is a point where there is something you need to get in return. I mean, that's everybody, right? Like nobody wants to give so much of themselves for nothing, right? But there's that even balance there. Like, hey, this is what we're willing to give to you, but I need you to give this to me as well, right? And often I feel like that becomes one-sided. It becomes a side of, well, I want, and then it's like, well, you're not meeting this expectation. So I think we need to do a better job of focusing in on that from the beginning and saying, hey, like in your situation, Brian, right? You're right. You're working 70 plus hours a week. You got to go to a training on a Tuesday night or on the weekend or something like that. Like you're tired. You got a family you're trying to spend time with. Like that's very stressful. That's where those conversations have to be made. Like, hey, listen, this is what this is going to look like for you, right? And here are your options, right? If you do this, this is what we're giving you in return. If you need to step away for a short amount of time, I'd rather you do that and be healthy mentally and physically and things like that. And then we'll figure this out. But please don't be a cancer within our organization, right? Don't bring everybody else down because you're so stressed out. Or, if this just isn't for you, please just say it. Just say this isn't for me, because keeping people around for the sake of having people on a roster isn't necessarily beneficial for our organization or our community.
Oh, absolutely. And my department is very understanding of, listen, family comes first. Our chief and our assistant chiefs, and tell that to people. Your family comes first. This place is going to be here. It's not going to fall apart because you're not here. And I think that's sometimes, especially the volunteer call, fire services. Your family comes first, fire department comes second. Because, well, that's just what has to happen, at least in my mind. I love the fire service, and I do all the trainings I can, but I think you have to have that organization that supports that and supports that. Hey, have a life outside of here, whether it's career or volunteer. Have that life outside of here, so you have that balance, so you aren't having that negative from people like, and this has got to be your number one focus, your number one priority, because that's going to create toxic. If people just want you constantly there and their expectations are unrealistic, that's just going to cause that. Anybody to just be like, well, I'm going to be a cancer. I'm going to be negative about this, and I'm just going to leave. So I think having those people that care and are like family, especially in the volunteer service, we're around each other. We see our families grow up together. We're all in the same community for the most part. Is having those chiefs and officers and other members that care, if that makes sense.
That makes 100% sense. I'm going to tell you right now, what you just described? It's culture. You want to talk about intangibles. You want to know what keeps people coming back, in my opinion. The guys that are plugged in and that want to keep contributing and being a part of something bigger than themselves are just that. Like they're plugged in and contributing because it's bigger than them, right? It's a culture thing. It's a mindset. Show me a department that's got a healthy firefighting culture, that's got a healthy, culture of taking care of each other and a family mindset and that camaraderie. Like that's the environment that, in my opinion, is lacking in a lot of firehouses across this country. Because it's just become just a job, whether it's volunteer or career. I'm talking about the job, right? It's just, and the intangible things like that are what, in my opinion, matter the most, because that's where people feel like they're part of something, where they're part of something that they're able to give back to, and be part of something that's, is gonna. You talk about getting stuff back. That's what it comes down to. Like all the money in the world, you could still be miserable, right? On the career side, I know plenty of guys that work for good paying fire departments. I mean, for our field, and are fucking miserable because it's not, the culture's not there. And when we talk about recruitment and retention, again, if you have a healthy environment where people are not afraid to train, not afraid to try, not afraid to contribute, they know that their brothers and sisters are going to be there and have their back, and support them in times of need, good times and bad times, right? That's the kind of culture that people say, you know what, I want to go to the firehouse tonight. You know what? I know I'm tired and I really could just make excuses for not going to the training, but I'm going to go be with my brothers and sisters and be better because we're doing something good for the community. We're doing something good for each other, right? And that's, to me, what draws people into being productive members, whether it's career or volunteering. And on the career side, it's funny, man, because we talked about the slugs, the guys that are just looking, what's in it for me, what's in it for me, what's in it for me, and how that can drain the culture. But I can tell you right now, man, on the flip side of it, if you got hard chargers, you talk about retention. If you got hard chargers that are putting out, and they're getting a bunch of undercurrent resistance, and there's not a healthy culture there, eventually you're going to see those high performers either not give a shit, or they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to go somewhere where they feel like they are welcomed. And so it is, I mean, really, it's a balancing act on a fire department level, because it's not good enough just to get people in the door. You can't talk the talk and not walk the walk. You have to put out and really make people feel like, hey, what you're doing here matters, right? When you're training, when you're coming to drill, or you're coming to do apparatus checks or whatever you're doing, making runs, all that shit matters. And here's why. And I think when people can get behind that, rally behind that, and there's that energy, that positive energy, that's what keeps people coming. You know what? Here's the thing, dude. Show me a career department where you have a high turnover, and everybody's calling out sick all the time because they're tired. They're just tired of it. They don't want to be there. And I'll show you a fucked up culture. I'll show you a culture where people, it's toxic, guaranteed. If you have massive amounts of sick leave being used all the time, and turnover and all these other issues, or people are just not engaged, that's a bad culture, right? Show me a volunteer firehouse. I mean, we're surrounded by volunteers, firehouses all around us. We service with our ambulance services, numerous volunteer fire departments in our area. And I can tell you, it's the same story, career volunteer. It's the same small group of people showing up to all the calls, showing up to all the drills, right? And they get burned out too, man. They're working full-time jobs, they're making runs, they're going to trainings. And the thing is, at some point you got to ask, like, when are those people going to stop giving, right? When are they going to say, you know what, it's not worth it? And that's where we talk about, chiefs have to understand, members have to understand, it does matter that we invest in our people. It does matter that we, give them quality training, that we give them quality and mentorship, that we give them a positive environment where they can come feel like they're part of a bigger family, right? And if you don't create that environment, eventually we're not going to have people in our ranks.
No, you're absolutely right. And I since we're talking about culture, I want to take a different approach on that, right? Like we often focus very heavily on our own organization, right? When we're doing this thing. And I think we should look at what's actually happening as a whole in the fire service, right? So we'll take my example for instance, like let me back this up for a second. Doesn't matter what fire department you work for, right? You are going to have people in there that are just, less than desirable. It is what it is. Those people exist in every organization. They're not going away, whatever. But we'll take my situation, for example. Like we talked about in the beginning, when you go to trainings and all these other things, and you network and you find people, and you're around like-minded people, things happen. So like when I got injured on the job, there's not a day. So I got injured January 20th. right? And there's not a day that somebody in the fire service isn't calling me or texting me and saying, "Hey man, how are you doing? Do you need anything?" Right? So that stuff does exist. You just have to go look for it, right? So I bring that up because we tend to focus a lot on the negative things of, hey, this is happening. This is, this is what's occurring in our organization. But there's a lot of positive things too, man. Like the fire service and the things we do and the amount of time that we spend together, right? We laugh, we cry, we joke, like all that stuff. Like we build bonds. And that's what we have to try and tell people, right? Is like, hey, you're going to experience a lot of stuff. You're going to experience probably some of the shittiest things in your life doing this thing. You're going to experience some of the most fun moments you're ever going to have. It's going to be a wild ride, but we're all here for each other, right? And to me, that's the foundation. Because if I, whether it be career, volunteer, paid on call, whatever it is, if I can't dedicate all of my time and effort into that with knowing that if something was to happen, that I'm taken care of, my family's taken care of, or something like that, then that's just not worth it. You know what I mean? Like that's why I feel like people are leaving. They're not feeling valued and appreciated. They're not, they don't feel like they have those connections. They're constantly being beaten down by those negative members in the organization, whatever it is. We spend a lot of time between training and our shift work or volunteer hours, whatever it is, for that organization, for that community. So, in order for anything to thrive in that culture, we have to foster that foundation of actually giving a shit about our people, whether we work with them or they're in a different organization across the country and we just know them, or, like maybe somebody we know, one of their members got hurt or whatever. Like that's where we truly step in and shine as a department that sets us apart. That this is more than benefits and pay. This is more than just attending training and getting better at the job. This is your life, right? This is what we do, and that's where, if we could put the emphasis on that and just really get people to understand it, I don't know, maybe that'll strike a nerve and help turn some of the stuff around. I have no idea, but it kills me to know that like people are out there in this job that don't have that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think we all know those guys that have your back, have your best thought in mind. I've made best friends in being a volunteer. You know, Chelsea will give me crap all the time saying, "You texting your boyfriend?" One of my best friends, because we're always checking in with each other. We're making sure the other one's okay. If something happens, at least with my organization, and I know even some of the guys I know further away, they're going to make sure I'm okay. And I think that's the part of the culture that, like you said, Sean, we don't talk about. We're trying to always say that there's the bad culture and how do we fix it, but we do need to talk more about that positive culture of how much friendship we've made in the fire service and how many people, friends and sometimes you'd consider them family that we make. And I think that's where an emphasis we do need to push, especially with recruitment and with retention, is you are going to make lifetime friends and family and have those memories and have that bond with people that you just normally wouldn't make.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And that's just a conversation. Like I'm a firm believer that a lot of what we do starts at the interview process. Period. It doesn't matter what the flyer says. Doesn't matter what got you in the front door. I have an opportunity in that interview process to sit down one-on-one and look at you and just talk, right? So let's just get to know each other, and then like we can talk about this stuff, right? And then at the end of that, say, hey, is this? Are you ready for this? Right? I don't think it's almost like the military, right? Like right out of high school, like people go in and they're young and they're inexperienced and things like that, and they think they want something, but they're not really informed on what it takes, right? So if we can just have those conversations and say, look, this is what the job is. This is what's going to happen. You're going to get hurt. You're going to see like some traumatic things. Like you're going to do this, but it's not all bad. This is also what happens here. Are you ready for this? And don't just say yes so I hire you. Like I need to know if you're ready for this, and then hold them to their interview, right? Whether that's volunteer or career, hold that person to the interview. You said you were going to do something. You're not. What's the problem? How do we fix it? right? Often we just are like, oh, this person sucks. And we just stop. We just let them go do their thing, and there's no effort given, or we just don't take the time to truly understand each other. And that causes a lot of problems. So we're in a time now where it doesn't matter which side of the service you're in, we're hurting. We're hurting bad. Like, we need people, and people are retiring, right? So as they retire, if we can't get people to come in, we're just taxing the members we currently have more and more and more. So we do have to get to the bottom of like how we're going to get through this thing, as a fire service and continue to thrive, because you know what, there's always outsourcing, right? If we can't take care of it ourselves, they'll find somebody else that can. There's private companies that are willing to do that for us, and I don't want to see that happen, right? I don't think anybody wants to see that happen. So let's just pay a little bit more attention to what's actually happening, and pretending like there's no issues doesn't solve it.
Yeah, I think you get some good points, man. The issues, well, there's slight differences from the career and volunteer side of things. I think it is a global fire service issue as a whole, meaning, we recruitment and retention on both sides of the fence are an issue. Obviously, the volunteer side of the house, has a little different dynamic because you have people, unlike, we go to work, we kind of typically know how many guys are going to be on a rig and things like that. There's different challenges that come with that, right? When you show up and it may be 2 guys or maybe 6 guys in your firehouse there, Brian, rolling out the doors, just depending on time of day, week, that kind of things. If you have a drill night and you got 20 people there, man, fantastic. But how many times do you show up and there's, 1 or 2 guys initially or whatever? It's a fire service issue though, when it comes to recruitment, retention, and culture and all those things. I think sometimes, like, I don't know, man, like I think sometimes we get so hung up on, guys get hung up on what's in it for me, or they get, what's in it for, what can I benefit from this? Or there's the mindset of, we get hung up on the negatives of the job, and guys want to throw rocks at the guys that are positive or whatever. And we gotta stop that. I think that's, when you look at what made the fire service so great for so many years, for the last 200 years, the reason why people have wanted to be a part of it is because it is different than every other job, right? It is truly a unique profession, and we can't lose sight of that. We can't lose sight of what made us great to begin with. And I think that part of that is a societal issue, right? As a society, people are just more self-centered as a whole, and that's maybe part of it. But I think the other part of it is too, is like, as a service, we've almost become cavalier about the job. Like, oh man, that's stupid. Why would you go to that training? Or why would you do this? Or just do what you have to do, and we want the t-shirts and we want the discount at the bar or whatever. But, and it, like I said, that's a career and a volunteer thing. That's a fire service problem. But, when it comes to accountability, like, we're the only ones that's going to fix our problems, if that makes sense. We're the only group of people that are going to fix us. And we talk about outsourcing and things like that. Like, that's unfortunately a very real situation in the American Fire Service right now, where you're seeing all these, agencies that are just closing doors and being taken over by other agencies, or just let it go. I mean, I just read an article the other day. I can't remember. I think it was up in Pennsylvania. Like, 180-year-old fire department closed their doors. I was like, just done. They're like, we're not responding anymore, and somebody else is going to have to pick up the slack. And that's a sad thing, right? It's a sad thing when you lose sight of the vision and in the direction that you're trying to go as a service. And I think that's what it takes, right? If we're going to build positive culture, if we're going to build a better fire service, is we got to look at where we're going, right? We can't just wander aimlessly through the streets hoping we end up in the right place. There has to be clear vision there. And how do you communicate that to your members? I think really starts with investing in people, right? And investing in your people, chiefs investing in their people that they're hiring the right people, equipping them, giving them the tools they need to be successful. But on the flip side, we have a responsibility as line guys too. We have a responsibility to take ownership in our craft and our profession, and to take care and nurture a positive, attitude, positive culture, positive training mindset, and getting back to the roots of who we are. And maybe, I don't know, man, maybe part of our problem is we've diluted the fire service to the point that we've made it about everything but the fire service. We've lost our kind of our vision of who we are and our identity. We wear all these different hats, right? Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I mean, but I can tell you right now that I've seen a lot of fire departments where fire is the last thing on their mind, and the fire service traditions and cultures have gone by the wayside. And to me, that's disheartening, right? When you see that stuff, the fire department's not even, changing their name anymore. It's not fire rescue or fire department. It's just like, emergency services, this, that, and the other. I'm not throwing rocks at, but what I'm saying, when we talk about the subtle things, right? I've read an article a couple of weeks ago about how that we should stop calling guys firefighters, right? Stop calling, that's an antiquated term. We're so much more than that. We should just be emergency responders or whatever. It's like, no, don't lose sight of who you are, because all the other shit aside, let's be honest, like we could outsource EMS tomorrow. We could outsource hazmat, USAR, all the other specialty stuff that we do. And we pride ourselves in doing all this, that, and the other. Hell, you could get civilian fire inspectors. You don't even need to run fire inspections. If you really want to get down to it, we could outsource everything we do except for fire. It's the one thing when people dial 911, they expect the fire department to show up and fix their problem. And that's where it comes down to, like, not losing sight of who you are, investing in your people, and building a fire culture, a fire department culture, and really and truly, that's what's made this job unique for 200 plus years in the American Fire Service. And if we're going to survive as a service, I truly believe it starts with right there, investing in people, showing them you care, and showing them why this is the greatest profession in the world, and making them feel like, man, damn, this is something else, man. Like, I want to be part of that, because this is a truly, truly amazing, for all the things that this job takes from us, our time, our money, our energy, our bodies, right? It also gives us a lot of positive things, relationships, brothers and sisters that just are there for us when we're hurting, when we're struggling. That's the kind of stuff that, you talk about camaraderie, you talk about, getting those people engaged. It starts in the firehouse with how we spend our time in the firehouse. And it starts, being consistent, in our training, investing, and showing people like, hey, you know what? We're going to put some time, energy, and money in this arena so that, that you are better, so that you do go home at the end of the shift, so that you are in one piece, hopefully, at the end of this, and I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm on a rabbit trail again. I'm really bad at that. Down those holes. But to me, like, we cannot forget that we are firefighters first and foremost.
Right on, man. No, all good stuff. It's easy to get down these rabbit holes and talk about stuff, especially when you're so passionate about it and everything else like that.
I drank a lot of coffee today.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Like, no, these are the conversations that need to happen, right? Like, and that's part of the problem, is they're not, right? For whatever reason, they're not happening. Maybe people feel uncomfortable about happening. I don't know, but just have the conversations. It's really not a difficult thing, and I'll tell you right now, I really don't care what people think. If they're like, oh, you're too into the job, or like, whatever, get a life, and I'm like, well, like, I'm here, and my life is in your hands, so I kind of wish that you would give a shit too, right? Because if only one or a few of us on that fire ground are capable of doing the things that need to get done, we're all screwed should something happen. So fire ground's not the time to figure out how to do things. Like, at least have a plan. And with that being said, Brian, I know that you're an engine nerd, and you love to play with hoses. So let's talk about some engine work. How does that look for you in your organization?
So
do you like to pump or hang on to the nozzle?
Oh, I'm a nozzle guy.
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. He's flustered now.
Yeah, I am. So the thing is especially in my department, we don't have separate engines, separate trucks. We kind of we do it all. And I'd rather put fire out. I'd rather do, be on the nozzle, be right at the forefront of the firefight. But in all reality, I do it all in the fire in my department. It depends on the fire. Sometimes we're going and doing that search. Sometimes we're going and doing that vent. It just depends on the fire and the situation at hand. But
you agree that engine work is God's work.
Oh, absolutely.
Just so we're clear.
Oh, absolutely. sorry to all those truckies out there. I mean, I know you're going to probably cry about it, but that's
Listen,
at least the way I work.
I tell
on a
people,
tangent.
listen, dude, I tell people all the time, like, listen, I spent years in a Suburban engine doing non-consensual truck work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you ride a Trenton, then you get to do it all anyway. That's where the true
True.
firefighters are. So, just kind of toss that out there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the one thing I like about especially my department. I'm doing it all. I'm riding the engine, and hey, guess what? You may need to go force door and then go vent. It's we're doing it all, and it may just be, hey, well, we put the fire out. We're kind of low manpower. Now you got to go do a search. It's ever changing at every fire for us. Sometimes during drill nights we do get truck assignments, and that's going to depend on what work we're doing. But most fires, we're all over the place, if that makes sense.
Well-rounded.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Like, I actually, believe it or not, I do like engine work. I think it's fun. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. And for the most part of my career, we didn't have a true truck company. I mean, we really still don't have true truck companies, but we just threw an extra engine on the assignment, and whoever had to do the truck stuff did the truck stuff. It was what it was. Right now, my situation can be different. Depends on where I'm riding for the day. I could show up and be on an engine. I could show up and be on the tower downtown, or I could be detailed to ladder 5. It really, it's a good thing because you get a well-rounded perspective of the job. And I will tell you, it is kind of frustrating sometimes when you're giving it like an assignment, right? Like, hey, you are a truck company, you do X, Y, and Z, and then that doesn't need to be done for whatever reason. You're just sitting there, right? So having that ability to like show up and be all over the place, I think gets people quite a bit of experience. When you show up and, our last fire, we showed up on the tower. It was a working fire. We pulled a hand line off the tower. It is what it is. Some people like shit themselves when they hear that. We have to do what we have to do as fire department. So you can't lose sight of the importance of engine work, I guess, is my point.
Oh yeah, and now when I say we're all over the place, I don't want people to think we're freelancing, because we know those type of people are out there that think we're freelancing. We're not freelancing. We're just going from one piece of work to another. It's not like I'm just going and breaking shit to break shit.
No, dude, it's just the nature of the beast when you're running short staff. Let's be real. I mean, this is most of us are in suburban or rural settings. I mean, that are listening. I mean, this is not. It's no secret. I mean, most of the show has been built around doing more with less, right? Being able to take care of business with less than ideal staffing, and especially in your setting, right? You really don't know what's going to show up. I mean, as far as resource pool, I mean, you may get one guy bringing a rig, and you may get 6 guys. Like I said, so when you're talking about your deployment model within the volunteer setting, at least in the career setting, I mean, our staffing may suck, but at least we know it sucks coming in, right? It's just one of those things where I think that definitely changes the dynamic. But as far as being versatile and kind of wearing many hats, that's where most of us find ourselves, right? You may catch a hydrant and fan a roof and go pull a line. I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, just depends on what the incident dictates. Whether you're an engine, a ladder, so to speak, or not, you're going to have to kind of roll with the punches and be ready for all those assignments. And that's kind of how, man, most of my career, that's how I trained, right? We train for wearing both hats, even though I have a preference for engine work as a whole. I have to be proficient in forcing doors. I have to be proficient in doing search. I have to be proficient in cutting holes in roofs or doing outside vent or whatever the situation dictates. Because even in my city now, I mean, we just we don't have a ridiculous amount of staffing showing up. It's just the reality is you got what you got. 3 guys on an engine, typically 2 guys on a rescue or ambulance. If you're lucky, you might get 4 on the truck. Maybe more often than not, it's 3. And so when you pull up, it's not guaranteed that you're going to have the truck doing this or that. I mean, there's many fires where, hey, you got 3 engines on scene before you get the ladder on scene. So, it is what it is. You're going to get off the rig and they're going to tell you, hey, we need you to do a search, and you're going to go do a search. I think that we put too much stock to, and the other thing too is, like, if you have strong SOGs and well-trained people, you don't need somebody holding their hand, right? You don't need somebody to, like, what needs to be done. Hey, chief, you want me to go vent this roof? Hey, yeah, you guys go do vent. Or, hey, we're pulling a line, have my second engine, their water supply, and you guys do a primary search, whatever. It should be that simple, right? We should know on a typical house fire what that looks like. And if you have strong SOGs, you don't have everybody asking for permission. Can I go do my job? Can I go do the job? Right. And so I know exactly what you're saying about the freelancing thing, as I know people like, those guys just doing whatever the hell they want. It's the Wild West. And the reality of it is, I mean, while that does exist in the fire service, the vast majority of departments, both career and volunteer, have some game plan going in typically. At least you know what it looks like on most of your house fires. So there should be at least a baseline expectation, right?
Yeah. You want to know what the expectation is? Save someone's life, save their shit. Say, man, it's that simple. So,
Yeah.
like,
Not rocket science.
we can cut out all of the banter immediately by just sticking true to our objectives. Is like, what do I have to do? Right? I have to remove a victim first, or I have to put water on this fire first. Those are my two options. And then second is, hey, there's some shit burning. I gotta either create searchable space for the crew that's gonna go and do that, or I gotta maintain the space I have. Like, all of that boils down to having the decision of putting the line in place or searching first or simultaneously. And the goal is simultaneously, but unfortunately, not everybody's privileged to have that staffing, right? Sometimes the best thing you can do is split it. It's like, hey, you put water on this and we're going to go this way. And if you have a crew of two, what that's probably going to look like for you is, hey, put water on this fire right here. I'm going to do a window initiated search real quick in this room to clear that, because I know it's a bedroom, and we'll see what we do next. And you can't pigeonhole how you're going to operate a fire ground, because they're all different. Like, we can have a generalized plan, right? But I mean, dude, I've showed up on the tower before and got off and helped the engine like finish stretching their line, right? And then go in and then hook some ceiling for them and then go do a search, right? Like, we have to be dynamic in our jobs and not just sit there like, oh, well, I only do X, Y, and Z. That's all I do.
Right? Especially on the volunteer side, right, Brian? I mean, you guys, depending on who shows up, that dictates a lot of what's getting done, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's days that we have 2 to 3 guys show up for the first 5 minutes, and you're calling for help and they're 10 minutes out. So sometimes you're kind of cowboying it and you're putting the fire out, you're making a search, and you're getting it done.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man.
Look, we got 8 minutes, man. That's what we got realistically on scene. 8-minute time frame if we want any significant impact for our victims.
Yeah,
that's not a lot of time.
Nope.
So in that 8 minutes, excluding dispatch and response time, that all plays a role.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most effective thing to do? Whatever that is, fucking get it done. Like, that's it. I don't care what piece of apparatus you show up on, right? Like,
yep.
End of discussion. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, the line's got to be stretched to go straight to the fire. Okay, maybe so, maybe not. How about protecting, putting the line between the victim and the search crew, right? That doesn't necessarily mean all the time that you've got to go straight to the fire, right? We could be flowing and moving and we're still accomplishing that task at the same time. But reality is, we still have to address the threat to everybody in that building, which is the fire itself. If we do nothing for that fire, things continue to get worse, right? So it's tricky to me, like, when you listen to the conversations of like search first or put water first or any of that, I'm like, they all have their application. You just got to understand when to use it, how to use it, and how does that look for you? Because not every department has the same opportunity to do the same things immediately.
Sure.
Like, dude, when I was paid on call, our thing was, hey, if you make it to the firehouse before anybody else, pull the engine out, wait 2 minutes. If nobody else shows up, ride out. You know how many times I went to a fire by myself and like other people came afterwards? What kind of position that puts me in, right? I have one thing that I know is going to make this thing better right now, and that's to pull a line and flow some water, right? And then everyone's like, oh, I can't believe you didn't search. It's like, what the fuck you want me to do, man? It was 10 minutes before I got any other help. Like, I can only do so much, right? So we have to understand, like, not to let our passions like override the thought of like being logical thinkers. Like, it's okay to be intelligently aggressive, right? But be logical, be intentional in your approach. Like, does it have purpose, and what is that? And we just use your manpower that you have wisely, right? And the rest is just friendly banner. Like, we're just going to joke around with each other about it, but don't take it too seriously, because the ultimate goal is put the fire out and save people.
Yeah. Well, what's the most important tactic? The one you need right now, right? It's what you need to do right now to make things better. So
Yeah,
whether that's pulling the victim out of the environment or taking the environment away from the victim.
that's it. I mean, that to me, that's as simple as I've been able to really display that to myself and to other people, because there's a lot of things that get complicated, especially with check sheets, right? That we're supposed to follow and everything else like that. And like, there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Just make it simple. And like, I'll be honest, not really a blue card fan. However, there is some good things. Okay. So I am a fan of the can report, because I think that applies to every function on the fire ground. Conditions, actions, needs. It's really, really simple. Just get those three things taken care of, and I think we're doing good.
Anything to add to that, Brian?
Other than sometimes just keep it simple, stupid. Nah.
Yeah. Don't overcomplicate it, right? Just, do your job. Be a fireman. Go put the fire out. Pull people out. That's really what it comes down to. So, dude, it's been a good conversation, man. We've covered a lot of ground. Been down a few rabbit trails and holes over the last hour and a half, but just really kind of in closing here, before we do the rapid fire questions, do you have anything kind of in closing, things that Sean just asked me just a few about the rabbit hole. So sorry. So it's hard to concentrate sometimes when I get the peanut gallery over here in the comments, but
yeah, you're welcome.
But no, yeah. Do you have any closing and thoughts or something maybe that we didn't touch on that you want to touch on real quick before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've touched on everything that I want to touch on. Other than, I guess, if anything, is don't be afraid to join your local conference, help out, find something local, get involved if you're into the job.
Yeah. So shameless plug, come to the North Florida Fire Conference in 3 weeks in Florida. Look us up. And if you're looking for some cool stuff to do in June, Great Lakes Hot.
That's
June
right.
15th through the 17th up in Michigan. And then maybe in the fall, we'll see something out of Fire Nuggets in upstate New York.
Well, actually, we'll be having training in July. It'll be getting announced within the next couple of weeks. We'll have Andy come out.
Oh, yeah, you're going to do some thermal imaging?
No, Andy Salcadacco.
Oh, okay.
Some water. Good. Yeah. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, there you have it. So 3 right there. If you're looking for training options, there's 3 of them right there. So shameless plug. I had to do it. Anyway, moving on to our, in closing here, man. Sean, you got anything to kind of, before we wrap it up here with the rapid fire questions to
Yeah, man, I'm just going to keep it brief. Like, look, just about any training event that goes on could use help. So if for whatever reason you can't afford to go, or you just want to be a part of it, just reach out to whoever's organizing that and shoot them a message like, hey, I'd like to help out in any way I can. Is that possible? And I don't know anybody that'll tell you to get lost. Like, I really don't, because, I think the Lake Effect conference just put something out on their Facebook like, hey, looking for volunteers, and, this is a big operation, putting together training of any kind. And more hands always make light work. So just be present, man. You'll meet a lot of good people. You'll get to sit in a lot of good training, and, you're still helping push that fire service a little forward, even if you're not the one right up there in front. So just get involved wherever you can.
Word. Yeah, that's it, man. I have nothing to add to that. I think you guys summed it up beautifully. So with that being said, Brian, are you ready for rapid fire? Ish, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, we're good.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it whether you're ready or not. So.
Oh shit.
Sean, I don't know. I think you said your daughter ran off with your phone, so you may not be able to see these questions.
It's all right. It's all right. I'll make up my own. Or you just talk them. I don't care.
Okay, so here we go. You ready? You ready, Brian?
Yep.
6 questions, 60 seconds. Let's do it. Ready? Favorite position on the fire ground?
Engine nozzle.
Beautiful. All right. What is the biggest challenge facing the volunteer fire service today?
Recruitment and retention.
Okay. All right. Sean, you got a couple?
Yeah. What's your favorite training drill?
Oh, shit. I like those 5-minute drills. I'll be honest, NFPA 5-minute drills.
Like the 14-10 drills?
Yeah. Yep. The 14-10 drills, especially for new people, getting them familiar.
Nice.
All right. So I don't think I have to ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway just because I like this question. So, nozzle of choice. If you have to pick a nozzle, which one are you taking with you for interior fire tech? Let me clarify that.
The one that's plugged and vibrates. I know that's what he's going to say. See, he's laughing because he's guilty.
I think that
You're a 100 psi automatic fog guy, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Ask anybody that knows me. That's the nozzle of choice. No, smoothbore without a pistol grip. Without a pistol grip.
Any particular orifice size, or you just like them all?
Nice and tight, 7/8.
There you go.
All right, Sean, you hit him with it though. I gotta stop laughing.
All right, so since you're an engine guy, what's your favorite hose to use? I know there's a lot of manufacturers out there, but what is your preferred preference?
I like Key. I've had my hands on Key. I like Key's push and help in the fire service, but ultimately, I guess it comes down to lightweight. I don't want to say lightweight, but quality built hose.
Quality built, right? So this is an offside question. Do you, being in charge of training, make sure that your nozzle and hose packages are set together?
I am doing my best to get there.
Fair.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Hey, that's a challenge.
It's a money challenge. It's not that guys don't see the need, but it's a money challenge.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, you'll get there, man. It's one step at a time. Even if it's only one piece of apparatus and then you move to the next budget year, like you got to start somewhere. So.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, who's been the most influential person in your fire service career to date?
Ooh. Honestly,
can't say Nick Peppard.
Damn it.
I would have to say my fire chief. He kind of, especially if you know how I was when I was younger, I was that kind of little shithead. He kind of pushed me to join the fire department, kind of kept me on the straight and narrow, believed in me, just kind of gave me that push, said, hey, listen, keep your head straight, gave me the opportunities as training officer and just other positions throughout my fire service career.
Excellent.
His name's Mike Caddick, by the way.
Well, Chief, if you're listening, you did all right. Although I will say, he's got still some edges to chip off there. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, listen.
But Chelsea's doing a good job though. She's definitely kind of smoothing you out a bit. So
that she is. She keeps me on my toes.
You got more than one fork in your drawer now, so it's a plus. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Sean. Any last question, man? You got to take it from here.
Last question. Okay. Let me see here. I didn't really plan this out too well.
Your kid took your phone.
Yeah, the thing I need the most.
Truck hurts my head.
So let's do this. This is kind of a Corley Moore question, but I always like to ask people this too because I always get different things. Favorite fire service book that you feel has made a tremendous impact on your career?
The Book of Andy. I read it. I touch on it almost every day as much as I can. There's something I pull from it.
That's a good one.
The Book of Andy.
Right. That's nothing wrong with that, man. There's a lot of good influential advice in there, and I think that's a lot of people. That's their Bible, so to speak. So nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say some kind of truck book, man. I was going to throw something at you.
Oh man, I don't even have anything to say.
No.
Do truckies know how to read?
I
You
I don't know
gotta
if you
use
can
you
even-
gotta use the scented crayons if you want them to read. Okay, we all know that.
listen. We all know I'm a little sensitive. Obviously, I'm out of work right now, so you know, I'm not exactly the most tough person. So I gotta make it easy, man. I gotta look at books that have pictures. I don't know how to read. I don't know how to write.
We'll have an
Chew on
intervention.
crayons if you give them to me. I'm all kinds of fucked up, man. You don't want to, it's bad.
Well, I mean, you spend a couple months on the tower. It wears on you, man. It just, that's probably why you hurt your back. You got soft riding the tower.
Yeah, well,
Listen, I guess,
know.
Is it better than riding the ambulance? I mean, let's be real.
Yes.
I mean, I'm
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes.
yeah. I'm not. I'm not going to say anything about that. I did 6 years straight on an ambulance, and it's a nightmare. So I want to forget about that a little bit.
It's like a black hole in your memory.
Yeah, you guys are bringing up my PTSD from those days. Thanks.
I was wondering why you were twitching.
Yeah, well, I'm about to have a seizure.
Oh shit. Well, Brian, thanks for coming on the show today, man. Sean, as always, it was fun. We'll get this thing edited up and pumped out to the masses for mass consumption.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, fellas. Laters.
Later.